Technik. Like in the other productions, we want to talk about some things. And in the Pathétique, we have we have a sonata which is completely easy. There is no difficulty. And so you don't have to practice.
Oh,
no, this is not true. It is very difficult. And please tell your experience. What do you think? Where are the difficulties for you? Where do you have to practice?
Well, I would say one thing to keep in mind is not to overplay the almost tremolo, bass-like tremolo. It's about not trying to work too hard with the fingers, but with a slight rotation and never quite leaving the keys.
Yeah. So profit from the wonderful Steinway, which still sounds when you only left
absolutely.
the key half up and. And this, by the way, is a wonderful Bösendorfer, and here it works too.
Yeah.
And what do you do there? Do you take pedal to help for the sound, or would you like to have a clear tremolo where one can hear every note?
You should be able to hear every note, but it has to be. That's not the main source of the excitement. It's the right hand that's going straight up like flashes of lightning. This left hand is integral, but not the absolute main element. And so obviously it should be light and as even as possible. But also there's a danger to get too fixated and then it becomes... And to keep it quiet for the entire first 4 bars before it says crescendo, because it's so tempting. With this, it would seem like it should go... do this big crescendo when he only writes it 4 bars later.
Would disturb the right hand.
Absolutely.
And how about the right hand? Which movement of the arm you use? Are you doing it with the wrist? Are you doing it with the part of the arm? Are you doing it from the fingers, or you change during the crescendo?
Well, it's mostly from the arm because it's a bit dangerous to go.
Yes.
You see, but if you try and prepare. As I say, lay the carpet.
Yes.
You should prepare and then...
And the touch, would you think one could practice it, for example, like this?
Yes, I've done that a few times at the beginning when I started.
Maybe in different intervals. To have it and to practice it maybe with the crescendo and the sforzato like it is written, to bring it out.
Yes, and also to do the voices separately I think was very helpful because there's quite a lot of thumb movement going. So that has to be completely relaxed and
so
loose.
one could, for example, practice a scale only with the thumb. Something like this.
And then also chromatic as well.
Yes. And at the end of the second page, it is, must look it up which bar it is. It is bar 50, 60, 49, 50. This is almost something which is really, on the first side, it is unplayable, and you get your arms and you can't go on. How do you do it?
Well, it's very important to have this very quick lateral movement. And so I think quite a useful way to practice it is if you just hold the left hand and practice this movement. Very quick. And then then prepare, and then try.
And maybe even just only the jump. With 4-1 or something like this. And the very interesting Mario Pereira, the editor of the new edition, he made a proposal for changing the hand there, so that you here already take the left hand, so then you can go into the new position with the right hand, and you can keep the tempo.
Yes.
Can you show this? Yes. So, nevertheless, the very first jump is okay.
Yeah.
But after this, you can't do it in this way, so you just
course.
have to practice. And yeah.
Also challenging, I think, is to get the clarity of these mordants. The fingering is very important. Of course, that completely depends on your hand and what's comfortable for you. But again, one thing we talked about a lot was not to do too much movement.
Yes, with
but
the arm.
More from the fingers and very loose and light.
And especially for myself, I found out that changing fingers can be a help. For example, if you have 1, and then 3, and then 2.
Yes, that's what I do.
Then you can't stuck. You
Yeah.
can't stuck, and I think this works. Can you show? Yeah, this works wonderful, and very interesting. This works in every combination of black and white keys. When you would think this is impossible, for example, 2 white keys and a black key at the end, you can do 1 3 1 3 2 1.
Yeah.
And you can rely that you don't stuck. Could you just play this again? Yeah, yeah. And very important is just to do it from the fingers. Otherwise, it is rhythmically not clear, and maybe it's even also too loud.
Yeah.
It's too loud. What about the chords?
The opening, grave.
How do you do it? With a extra accent, or you just let the arm fall? What do you recommend?
Arm weight is really essential for these big chords, because you don't want to play from the elbow down and go, because then you get a harsh sound.
Yes.
And so a good way is to always try and connect the arm to the shoulder and then to the back, that you feel like you're playing these chords with your entire body.
Yeah.
And the aim is really to get this round sound that isn't, again, like a hammer, and to try and really feel the weight of your arms and completely relaxed is essential.
That you just fall down and let the weight of the arm do the sound. Yeah. Exactly. Second movement. Difficulty. What do you think? What is the problem? Where do you yourself have to be attended mostly?
Well, there's, again, completely different set of difficulties to the first movement. The primary one being mostly phrasing and quality of sound. And it's easier said than done to just say, you should sing here. It's about how do you physically do it and how do you listen. And a useful way perhaps possibly is thinking about, again, totally relaxed arm and sinking into the keys. I was always taught when I was younger from my wonderful teacher in England, Dina Parakina, to like a parachute. Never.
Yes, exactly.
And this is really essential, not just for this movement, but for all piano playing. We're always trying to sing. And also to think about the phrasing. How would you sing it? You don't want to go. You want to try and connect. I won't sing now because I've got a cold. But that's always a really useful way.
But you go there, and then you go on.
Yeah.
And with a crescendo to the next.
Yes. And I think if you're at home, it's always useful to try singing and how would you phrase it. And if you try and sing it in one breath, you realize that you need to take breaths. And it's in this way that it will help you try at least and get a natural and singing.
And for pianissimo chords like this, it is bar 44. I think there also is this situation where you don't let the key come up completely, and you profit from the possibility of repeating.
Yeah.
Can you show it? I even would do it even with a little bit more fingers, but of course, as you said, it is personal taste and personal also capacity, and there are a lot of different possibilities. But of course, move the arm a little bit and the wrist and also the finger. And like Zhu Yu said in her comment, trying this in different keys to change between white and black keys and the combination of them. I think this would be also very helpful. The third movement. Scales. One should practice scales with the also with changing from normal semiquavers to semiquavers and triplets, and also with quintals and all this.
Yeah, there's a lot of scales in this final movement, and with all scales, the really key element is the mobility of the thumb to pass under, because otherwise you'd get.
Yes.
And so it has to be as much as
Especially
possible.
when you go up, you must prepare the thumb when the other fingers are playing. Now it must be already here and here too. And I think this is really essential for preparation, the new position, and also to practice this slowly and to listen, not to do accents, and and also practice it in different dynamics, because here we have even fortissimo.
Oh yes,
sometimes. How about left hand in this third movement?
Well, there's the two sections with triplets, which need to be. He's written piano, and they need to be light and elegant. And there's many different fingerings that you could do. You could either do 3-2-1. And in the right hand, again, completely personal. But I think it's very important to practice it, of course, slowly. And really, when you're thinking about this, think about each note, and at the very beginning at least, think about each physical. And always listening.
Yes.
I think that's really quite vital.
In different editions, I have seen a lot of proposals, and Mare Pereira writes 3-2-1 just, which I also, for me, it would be the best. But there are 4-3-2,
4-3,
and also 4-3-1, and then 3 again. Well, I think one has to try it out, and if it works, you could even play with your nose, if you like. But the fingering here from Pereira, I really admire very much, and it helps very much. But I think doing fingerings, it's never like behaving like a guru, because a guru is always right. But it's just a proposal, and I think these are decent proposals, and I liked very much to see it and to follow it. What do you think in such a passage? Should it be completely leggero, almost non-legato, or maybe even with a small pedal to give a sound?
The way I think it can sound, there's so many different ways. Perhaps with a slight pedal, because we have a minim, and so you want to hear the connection in the right hand. And then in the left hand, it should be very light, and again, elegant. It's all about, the technique is always, it's never a separate element. It's always connected with the mood and what you want to do.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And just for the final scale, what is about pedal and scale?
A difficult question, because of course we have this big chord. it would be maybe sacrilegious to go.
Yeah, this would be too much. But if it's too clear,
but then it also can't be.
Yeah, it's fortissimo, so but
Yes.
one could play it in this articulation. I think this would be too clean.
Yes, it has to have a bit of.
The emotion there, I was thinking, we are here in a studio in the Mozarteum, 2 floors behind sea level, and with a lot of stairs, and we prepared all the books and the scores, and went down the stairs, and imagine you fall. And all the books follow you, and you are on the ground. And I think this is such a situation without control and very strong, and even if possible in fortissimo, even a crescendo to the last chord.
Yes.
I think one could use a little bit of pedal.
Of course, yes, especially for the chord.
I would use a lot of pedal. Maybe you can just do the wonderful ending. There we also have this change. We have a fermata, then suddenly A flat major, we talked about already, decrescendo pianissimo, and you think it's like a big question mark, and then somebody throws the door or something like this. Can you show it? Yeah, Beethoven Sonata, C minor, Opus 13, Pathétique, one of the most famous Beethoven sonatas, just next to Moonlight, to Appassionata, to Waldstein. And everybody who ever played the piano for sure tried at least the second movement or the beginning of the second movement to get his grandmother to tears. And well, Callum from Manchester, now we have in our talks, we have the first real English talking, and it's kind of lesson of good English pronunciation, and I feel very guilty for my English, but now we can hear the right English. And Callum is 19 years, and well, as you can read everywhere, that this sonata is a kind of emotional explosion and a very strong espressivo and feelings and a lot of other things. You are young, so you are full of power. We could hear it in your performance. What do you think about this sonata? How do you feel it, and how you invest yourself into this music?
Well, I've played this sonata since I was about 12 or 13 years old. And I mean, it's a piece that sort of, even people that don't play the piano love. It has that immediate quality. It was immediately successful when Beethoven wrote it, age 27, and it still today, it has this direct, immediate power. Various things that struck me about rediscovering it for this production is the real orchestral quality. Obviously, we find this in all Beethoven, but especially in this first movement. Many parts almost unpianistic. It sounds almost like a piano reduction of an orchestral score. And this introduction is so famous. Everybody knows those first 3 chords. And these 3 great pillars that sort of set the sonata off. And these 3 statements are separate. There's silence in between. And so it's a challenge to connect them, and so that they make a logical progression from to the next one. And then finally more. And so these big sort of, you could imagine the full orchestra playing is responded by almost perhaps woodwind or just the violin, violas, and maybe just cellos. And it's in this orchestral nature that the entire piece unfolds, I think.
So this Grave is a kind of introduction, but in a way, it is part of the thematic material of the whole movement because it comes again and again. And what do you think? Is it a preparation? It's a curtain open, or is it part of the idea of this first movement?
Oh, it's both, I think, because it isn't just that we are introduced, like in Opus 111. We have this theme, which then comes back before the development section in G minor. And then finally, before the coda or the final few bars, we have these pleading chords which return for the third and final time. And so I think the grave sections clearly mark each section and really defines the structure very clearly.
And there have been discussions about the repeat in the exposition, and there are some sources who argue for repeating the grave. Maybe a little bit like the discussion in the last years about the beginning of Chopin's B-flat minor sonata. What do you think? Have you tried in concert both versions?
Well, actually, in the B-flat minor sonata, I've played that quite often, and I'm convinced I prefer going back to. But many people do go back to the opening. And I personally prefer the traditional way. But who am I to say?
Well, one could do it. One could try it out.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Not good would be to do it 3 times. Then the Allegro con brio section. What do you think? Is there a limit of tempo, or like Zhu Yu said in her interpretation to Opus 28, the major sonata, you have just to feel it and then do what you feel in the moment. What do you think?
I think it's about finding that balance between. I mean, this opening theme from the Allegro is so energetic, and he writes Allegro molto con brio with vigor. And I think it's flying up the keyboard, going. And so there's many recordings where they go even as fast as. And so I think it's entirely up to the performer, but I personally try and find a balance between excitement and this almost flashes of lightning as it flies up, and also having poise and restraint, which is the real challenge in this Allegro.
And we have to have in mind that it's still a classical sonata, so
for sure.
Of course in con brio it would be possible and imaginable to do an accelerando there and to prepare the sforzato and really speed up, but maybe this would be too much.
Yes, I think it would be, because Beethoven for sure has this great difficulty of being on the border between classical and romantic. There's many romantic elements, but it is always in a classical form. Even in his later sonatas, there's always a strict form. And so I think it really is about finding that balance, I think.
And what do you think about passages like this? We had in Zhu Yu's discussion, we had the thema here. And this is an earlier sonata. Should one play the accompaniment note more clear? Should one point them out, maybe even to have the energy?
I think the energy is in the harmony and also in the top line, and then it continues on into staccato. That is when I think it becomes more clear. Here, I think he has slurs on the lower notes, and I think it sounds. These is simply an accompaniment.
Yeah. So this is after bar 89 and follow. Yeah. And well, this interruption of the Allegro con brio by the Grave, so this is a quite important moment.
Absolutely.
And we have the fermatas, so you think one should take long fermatas and wait a long time to prepare and also to hold the tension.
Yes.
Second movement, the all-time hit. What do you think? Very interesting, and I would just like to point out again, there is one book by Joachim Kaiser, who was a famous critic of the Süddeutsche Zeitung, and he was himself a very good pianist. I often heard him in Munich talking about Beethoven sonatas with a piano on stage and playing something. It was very good. And he discusses several possibilities. This book on the Beethoven sonatas is about 40 years, so he discusses the famous pianists at this time, but still is a book which really is a milestone in interpretation, and I would recommend it strongly. He writes about the different possibilities, just to put out the melody and to bring out dolce cantabile, or even to show this kind of second violin or viola doing the accompaniment, or maybe even later bring it out when there comes triplets. What do you think?
I think for sure it is very much like a string quartet. It's very clearly written with that in mind. I think the main thing to really think about is quality of tone of the main voice, and to really, that's the thing that we're all searching for, is this singing tone that is warm. For instance, Beno Mazejevich, a great hero of mine, is an absolute exemplar of this. And so often I would practice this slow movement as a almost chorale to search for the warmer tone.
Can you show?
And go through the entire piece like that.
Can you do it now with the original accompaniment? Yeah, and just as an alternative, could you show how it sounds if you do a little bit more the inner voices?
I've always thought of the inner voices as of course they're essential because they give movement, otherwise it would just be crotchets. But I think it's almost a sighing, and so that it shouldn't be equal, it shouldn't be, it should be more, perhaps.
And I think if you point out this accompanying notes too much, then you lose the feeling for the adagio. I think the adagio really should follow the melody, and this is the moment which creates the adagio. How is this in the middle section when it turns to minor and we have this kind of staccati with sforzati? What do you think? Should one think about the first movement and really play it with strong expression, pathétique? Or
I think this is another world away from the pathos and dramatic nature of the first. I think this is, of course, perhaps more sorrowful, and we have this long in the upper voice, and simply, again, perhaps second violin and viola just going. Again, providing movement and it's this combination of stillness and yet slight movement, which is the key to the whole piece, and finding again that balance. But again, I think it should be in the background. I really think so.
And so this movement after this exploding first movement gives also the audience a chance to rest a little bit, and not only to rest but to dream maybe.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So in a way, it's early Beethoven. So he was 27, 28. Yeah. You must imagine here in the Mozarteum, a young student comes in with his score and says, "Look what I wrote," and this is Beethoven. And but I think one can already call this one of the first romantic pieces.
Yes, in terms of mood and atmosphere, it is absolutely very romantic, and especially when we go from
Yes.
and the whole atmosphere of this entire slow movement is really very romantic, and it's about really how it comes back 3 times, always in A flat major, and but each time slightly changed, and it's so. What do you do with that? And you could sing more, or try and do slightly different phrasing, or get an even longer line, or perhaps show certain different elements of the harmony.
And from the knowledge of the romantic period, Schubert's C minor sonata is a very similar beginning. Well, we know how to do sometimes a kind of rubato. And I think with this knowledge we cannot ignore this. And so it will be almost there. And well, even if you have an orchestra with a baroque strings, you maybe do a very nice rehearsal and then you go out and with your mobile phone you would call the taxi. So it is a different time, but of course we have to have in mind, I think, that is romantic. And but not too much, of course.
Of course.
What do you think of the third movement?
The third movement,
kind of rondo. It's coming again and again. And how about the tempo?
Well, it's only written allegro, and so, I mean, what does allegro mean? It's not 126 beats per minute. It's completely subjective. I think this movement is a lot lighter in character compared to the first movement, which is so intense and dramatic.
But would you think this is still under a certain pressure, or it is just relaxing and playing with some really wonderful ideas of articulation and phrasing?
Oh no, for sure there's many dramatic moments in it, and especially in the coda towards the end, it gets remarkably dramatic. And I think, again, thinking about connecting bars and getting a long line, whilst having a certain poise and restraint. It always reminds me of from Beethoven's Third Concerto, how that comes back.
Yes.
And so the tempo, I mean, many recordings, they go, and then some. I went for a slightly more quicker tempo, and it's been a great joy and difficulty getting to know this final movement again.
And how about the sforzati and the chords? Should they be really kind of memory of the first movement and point them out very strong, or should they fit in this little bit relaxed atmosphere?
I wouldn't say it's a relaxed atmosphere. I'd say there's certainly tension, and you can in a diminished seventh, and but the sound, I think, should be, of course, it's sforzando, but it should also be round and not like a punch or a hammer. It should be more, and then.
Yes. There is one point which we discussed, and I think there are a lot of different possibilities. I would just like to show it. It's bar 170, this collando. And one really could think, where is the end of the collando? Is this? And starts it like this? Or is the G, it's the upbeat for the new tempo? Could you show these both possibilities? I always don't know what to do, because I think both possibilities are wonderful. Yeah, this would, when you hold it a little bit, I would hold it even more, big fermata, and try to do a tempo there. Yeah, so this would be would be the upbeat, but in the bass, I think both possibilities are there, and I really cannot decide it even after years. I love both very much, and yeah, I think you played it very well. And at the end in the coda, one could even discuss when it suddenly goes to A flat major, just some bars before the end. Maybe one would be allowed to take a little bit less tempo, just to let the sound flow and let the sound work in A flat major. But well, we talked very often about this. For such decisions, we should have the telephone number of Beethoven. And maybe if the digitalization in world goes on, maybe someday we have it. And I have a long list of questions I will ask him in my very first call to him. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for your wonderful performance and for your emotion and for the power you worked on it. And it is a pleasure to listen. Thank you.